So welcome to our final Chris Noon lecture of the semester. We're joined by a couple of people who I'll introduce in a second. Our speakers are based in Croatia, so we have kind of this Zoom feed going on where we will be able to see them when they talk in their slides, and then they'll also be able to see all of you from that view. So, all right. So I also want to say, as I just said, this is the last Chris Noon lecture series. We'll obviously have more next semester, and our calendar should be out with all of those details in the next few weeks. We will resume on January 15th for our first event, which is investigative journalism in the Baltics, breaking the Kremlin's operations in Estonia and Latvia. We'll be joined by investigative journalists Inga Sprenge and Holger Runema. But stay tuned, and if you're not already on our CREASE listserv, you're welcome to sign your name up for hearing about future events as well. Today, we have the noon lecture, All Art is a Political Statement, and they have the honor of introducing our three speakers. Arijana Lekić Fridrih, who was born in Zagreb, where she currently lives and works. She has a degree in film and video from the Fine Arts Academy in Split. She has worked as a screenwriter for a documentary series and is director of 2 short documentary films, Online and The Parade, but her work is currently focused on video and performance art. She regularly exhibits her work in Croatia and abroad. The other guest speaker joining us from Croatia is Brian Williams, who's an associate professor of literature at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Split, Croatia, where he also is director of the Studia Mediterranea Center. His most recent academic book is Sham Ruins, A User's Guide, and he is co-editor along with Slavoj Žižek and Nikola Baria Senjo of Global Manifestos for the 21st Century, published in 2024. We're joined here locally and who will kind of coordinate with our guests in the slides. Rebekah Modrak is an artist and writer whose practice is at the intersections of art, activism, and creative resistance to consumer culture. Her web-based artwork, such as Remade, Ho, and Rethink Shinola, critique brand misrepresentation. Recently, she co-edited Trouble in Censorville, the far right's assault on public education and the teachers who are fighting back, published by Disobedience Press in 2024. And she is co-editor of Radical Humility, Essays on Ordinary Acts, in which 20 writers from philosophy, psychology, consumer culture, and other fields consider humility as a state of being. Dr. Modrak is a professor of art at the Stamp School of Art and Design here at University of Michigan. I would also note that this book, was it published today? Right, today? I just knew it was recent, but maybe that's fresh. So we have a fresh copy of the book about Arijana Lekić Fridrih, All Art is a Political Statement, and the bilingual edition, so it's in Croatian and English, right? Will also are being sold here today, so you can pick up your freshly print off the press copies. Nick, are you gonna?
Oh yeah.
Sell them at the okay, great.
Or bullion.
Okay. So they'll be doing that after the talk, after the presentation. So, all right. Well, without further ado, I'll turn it over, Rebekah, to you. So thank you all for joining us. Wait, put that in your pocket. Then, if you don't want to move, if you want to move, you're not tied down.
Okay, is this okay? So thanks for being here today, and thank you so much. I'm so excited that Arijana and Brian are here with us. Let's see. So the book starts off by talking about some of our sort of shared dilemmas within the United States and Croatia, from far-right attacks on and Christian nationalist attacks on reproductive health care for women in the United States. That also includes far-right attacks on the separation between church and state, especially within education. And so we you'll find a lot of like common themes today in the things that we're facing here in the United States politically and in Croatia and Ariana's work and what she's protesting against. And so that's what we begin with in the book, but I'm going to jump today to talking about Be Manly. I'll start there. And so the plan for today is I'm going to read a little bit from the book to introduce you to the Be Manly movement, and then pass things over to Ariana to talk about her work for a bit. And Brian and I might jump in with questions or prompts, and we'll start things off with some questions, at least at the end, and then open them up to you if you have any questions for Ariana. So one Saturday in June 2022, about 100 men, members of the far-right Be Manly movement, staged a performance piece of their own. Kneeling in a public square in Zagreb, they prayed, quote, for the homeland, for peace and the conversion of the Croatian people, for men to become spiritual authorities in the family, for a life of premarital chastity, for women, of course, no mention of men, for chastity in dress and behavior, again, this applies presumably only to women, and for the end of abortions, end quote, among other ultra-conservative wish fulfillment fantasies. Since then, the kneelers, as locals call them, have carried on kneeling for 90 minutes on the first Saturday of each month, though they've relocated to Ban Square, the square of all Croats in the heart of downtown Zagreb, so that, quote, by praying on it, we will consecrate it, but also the whole of Croatia. In April 2023, the movement extended its reach, praying the rosary in 10 Croatian cities on the same Saturday. They come from as far away as Poland, where the movement and the funding originated, and from the far corners of Croatia. Men from the city of Split travel to rural areas in Dalmatia. Oh yeah, this is some of what we've looked forward to after the election, the increase in violence against women since our recent U.S. elections. And here we are with the Be Manly movement. Be Manly members often display Ustaša symbols of fascism, such as the capital U, that have been illegal in Croatia since 2003. Ustaša symbols are so much a part of ultra-conservative Croatian culture that from 1991 to 1992, the Croatian Defense Forces, the paramilitary army of the neo-fascist political party, the Croatian Party of Rights, used the insignia and the slogan, "Ready for the Homeland," the Croatian variant of the German Sieg Heil. These days, the slogan is not banned, but the Croatian Criminal Code prohibits hatred or violence against people on the basis of racial, religious, national, or ethnic affiliation. Yet in the 2 years since Be Manly began its prayer vigils, not one political party has objected to the group's display of NDH iconography and Ustaša symbols, and not one municipality has issued fines. It's unclear whether the Be Manly movement is supported by the fast emerging networks of far-right groups in the Balkans and East Central Europe, but the Vigilari Foundation, an ultra-conservative anti-reproductive rights, family values organization in Croatia, is almost certainly funding the organization, while simultaneously contributing to Croatia's extreme right nationalist party, Homeland Movement. The Vigilari Foundation was co-founded in July 2016 by the Father Piotr Skarga Association for Christian Culture, an ultra-conservative Catholic organization in Poland with links to the Ordo luris Institute for Legal Culture, the ultra-conservative think tank and Catholic legal group behind anti-LGBT resolutions and draconian restrictions on abortion in Poland. American conservatives are getting in on the game too. The American Center for Law and Justice, the brainchild of televangelist Pat Robertson and Donald Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow, is exporting US-style conservative culture war activism and millions of dollars in aid to far-right groups through its continental branch, the European Center for Law and Justice. Another American advocacy organization, the Alliance Defending Freedom, co-hosted the 2012 conference that inaugurated the funding of Ordo Juris. Ordo Juris and the Vigilari Foundation, thought to be the Polish and Croatian versions of the same ultra-conservative organization, are footing the bill for Be Manly. If a scheduled event is undersubscribed, or if the Polish bus of prayers is not coming, Be Manly or Ordo Juris pays cash-strapped Croatian men to participate in the group's pray-ins. With its rocky transition from communism to a free market and little economic development in areas that are over-reliant on summer tourism, like Dalmatia and Istria, Croatia has a significant population of unemployed or underemployed men. For many of the movement's members, however, its appeal is more visceral. Be Manly reaffirms traditional notions of masculinity amid feminist challenges to the social order, at a time when faith in institutions such as the patriarchy is fast eroding and conventional definitions of what makes a man seem increasingly outmoded. It's no surprise that reinforcing traditional gender roles is foremost on Be Manly's paleo-conservative agenda. Although 79% of Croats identify as Catholic, only 7% of the population wants to ban abortion. The procedure has been legal up to 10 weeks from conception since the 1950s. Now, however, these rights are under attack from Be Manly and its fellow travelers on the far right. Under the banner of religious freedom, a 2003 law legalized gynecologists' right to deny abortion on moral grounds as a faith-based conscientious objector. As a result, 60% of OBGYNs refuse to perform abortions. It is only to be expected that men who attempt to dominate and circumscribe women's equal voice in a family, their bodies, and their sexuality would control all aspects of their public presentation. Women whose husbands or boyfriends have joined Be Manly are prohibited from kneeling to pray alongside them, but are permitted to stand at attention nearby, but no closer than a strictly regulated 2 meters, which foils any secondhand sexuality that might affect a chaste praying guy when he claps eyes on a woman. Many women are not aware when they dress provocatively, this causes great discomfort for the male population, said Father Boshidar Naj, a leader of the group's early prayer demonstrations in January 2023. Quote, women should not provoke men through their clothing to sin, end quote. That for me was the breaking point, says Arijana Lekić Fridrih. At that point, Be Manly revealed who they are. They're wolves in sheep's clothing, here to roll back gender equality and reproductive rights. By September 2024, the rhetoric of the kneelers at Be Manly's prayer events was getting more and more extreme, more and more frightening, says Lekić Fridrih. Since 2022, they've been reviling anyone who is against them as agents of Satan. But in 2024, they began praying for the election of a good Catholic president who supports them. She'd had enough. On December 3rd, 2022, at 8:30 in the morning, she walked to Bonn Square and stood silently, motionlessly, facing down the battalion of men armed with their rosaries and their rituals. She stood there not moving, not speaking for the duration of their prayers. This was the first silent mass. And Arijana, thank you so much for being here, and I'll turn the slides over to you.
Okay. Where am I? Where am I? Derek, help.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, I can. First of all, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to the University of Michigan for having me and also for publishing this publication. I am hopeful that it won't become a manual for other countries, but as the state in Europe is now, it probably will. We read books from Poland, who was the first country that had similar issues, and which didn't really end up well. So I would like to start by maybe just positioning the Ordo Juris and patriarchy movements and political movements in the region, because I think it's really important to realize why this is happening and why is it happening in such a way. So 6 years ago in Poland, there was the first gathering of Be Manly movement, and there was just only a couple of men praying, and the Polish people decided they won't, even feminist organizations decided they won't do anything, because of course it is always a dilemma when you see something like that, to ignore it, not to give it any attention, or to give it all and just try to prevent normalizing that narrative. So their decision was to ignore it, and overnight the election turned, and the strict abortion rules came into law, and they now for 2 years have let's say a bit more moderate government, but they're really slow in processing those laws because they don't still have the majority. So during the 4 year of ruling of the Conservative Party, ultra-conservative party in Poland, women were literally dying. And I will just give one example, which I find maybe the scariest one of them all, and that's of a young woman named Dorota, who actually died while giving birth because her child was born dead, and the doctor wasn't allowed to take it out of her body, so they died both. That's how strict the laws were. And now we see some progress in Poland, but their projection is that it will take 15 years for them to come back to the women's rights as they were 6 years ago. And they are at exactly the same point as we have now in Croatia. So when I first noticed this Be Manly group, I definitely didn't know about how it started in Poland, because there was no coverage on that, because Polish activists knew, they then had the timeline, but it was more important to fight against those laws, but to tell the timeline how it really happened. But I was with my niece, and we were walking on the main square in Zagreb, and my niece was actually the one who asked me why are there men on the knees praying. So as I came home, I did the research, and it was a really quick research, because Be Manly is a really they're really open to what they're advocating for. So it's what, as Rebekah said, it's chastity. They pray to Virgin Mary to control their urges when they see a woman that's dressed provocatively, which I have a lot of questions about. What does it mean? What will happen if Virgin Mary doesn't control their urges, or why they can't control their urges? And is it connected in any way with the high increase of gender-based violence in Croatia we see in the last 7 years? Also, the same question I have about them praying to become moral authorities of the family. What if the woman doesn't want men to be that? What is her choice? Is it connected to the also high rate, if it gets higher and higher each year, of domestic violence? So for me, it was important because my work is mostly, I will show another work after, dealing with narratives, and especially hidden narratives that become a part of the nation, a part of the story about the nation, and something that we consider to be normal, but it isn't. So the reason why, for the first time when I was there were 15 men, was because they didn't want to draw much attention on them. They were just There were just like 15 men praying very peacefully. But as soon as I came for the first time, it all began as a cycle of violence. And this December, actually this Saturday, will be 2 years of me standing on the squares all over Croatia, because I really don't believe in protests in Zagreb, because Zagreb is the capital, and it also has a different financial. I mean, it has a bigger paying rate than the rest of Croatia. So it's not a surprise that they are now in 22 cities, and most of them are in Slavonia. And Slavonia is the poorest part of our country, very neglected and mostly hurt by the war, and never really. Nobody ever really paid much attention to that region, and people are, in my opinion, people who kneel in Slavonia are also protesting on the politics of the country. Speaking of politics of the country, we had a super election year last year, and we still have one more election to come this year, the presidential election. But what happened was that first couple of months there were no politicians on the mainly assemblies. But then all of a sudden came this newly made ultra-conservative party, Domovinski Pokret, like national coalition, something like that, which started to kneel as well. And they were recruiting, of course, their values, and people who were kneeling, by our analysis, in most cities were members of that party. So it was no surprise that that party really managed to gain a lot of points, which I have no idea why nobody expected to happen. But they were really proactive, and they held rallies every first Saturday of the month. Rallies masked in something they call religious gathering, but the church, and it's a paradox. It's something that's really weird. Rebekah already told you we're a predominantly Catholic country, but no political party ever said anything about those meetings or performances, as I call them. But the church did, because it was important for them to say that they are not a part of it. So there are always a couple of individuals who are priests in some local churches, but the national church in Croatia actually managed to say that they are not a part of this movement. So Derek, I think you can put the next slide, because it's a long... No, take me back.
Ariana, do you want to go forward and show the video of you in Split?
Yes, please. So first, I just want to say that yes, when I said that those last 2 years were pretty violent, this is an example of that. But also things that happened to me were, I gained a lawsuit against a former member of parliament who touched my breasts in 10 in the morning on the main square in Zagreb. I was beaten by a flag. I'm now laughing, although it's not really something to laugh about, in Šibenik. with no police intervention at all. And every time I go to a city, except Zagreb, where they know that nothing can happen to me because it would be a scandal, and it's not a scandal unless it happens in Split or in Zagreb. I literally count the bruises as well as my fellow civic activists, and yeah, this is the example of Split. And just for a short introduction, it was not filmed by me. It was filmed by the most famous singer in the region, not only in Croatia, but in the region, Severina Vučković, who shared it on her social networks, and she's from Split. So this actually put a lot of media attention towards the police and their behavior and their ignorance, and how they are in cahoots with the people who pray and not doing their work of protecting me.
I dovedi u raj sve duše, a ostali glasa i u vijeke vjekova. Amen. O moj Isuse, oprosti nam naše grijehe, sačuvaj nas od paklenog ognja i dovedi u raj sve duše, a osobito one koje su najpotrebnije od Tvoga milosti.
Ne možete ovo prijavljati. Nije to bradostvo.
Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas grešnike.
Policija me udaljila, ja ću se vratiti nađer, jako građan kako smijem raditi.
Moli za nas grešnike. Sveta Marijo.
Vidite kako imate lijepo mjesto.
Nemojte me, molim vas, ajde me pustite na miru. Znam da vi mene ne razumijete, ali morate pustiti. Zašto je gospođa? Ona smije biti.
Je tu isto kao i vi.
Aha, onda znači mogu i ja.
Zdravo Marijo, milosti puna te Isus. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas grešnike. Gospodi s tobom, blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen Isus tvoj sin. Sveta Marijo, blagoslovljena ti među ženama. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas grešnike sada. Milosti puna, Gospodin s tobom i blagoslovljen Isus tvoj sin. Sveta Marijo, Majko, moli za nas grešnike.
Blagoslovljena ti među ženama i blagoslovljen plod utrobe tvoje, Isus.
Sada i na času smrti naše, amen, na času smrti naše, amen. Sveta Marijo, Majko Božja, moli za nas grešnike, sačuvaj nas od paklenoga ognja i dovedi u raj sve duše, osobito one koje su najpotrebnije od Tvoga milosrđa.
Okay, so I know you didn't understand or even heard well, but actually that silent mass was the most violent one. Nothing serious actually happened besides this huge Polish man who took me and carried me to the other part of the peristyle, but that was the place I got a direct threat. So the person you see on the screen, the guy with the black jacket, he's the chief of police. The other one with the white jacket, he's the chief of the Polish prayers. So those are people who come at 5 a.m. to Split, and then they pray on this place and they have to have a license to be able to pray there. And I had all the licenses from the city, from the police, and from, since it's a cultural heritage, from a cultural heritage museum. So they didn't have any. But they had a short conversation, which was also recorded before, the chief of police and the chief of the prayers, who said, "Okay, if you let her come down to this place is called Peristil. I can't say what might happen to her." And the guy says, "Okay, don't worry, I will keep her out of there." But I didn't let it happen, and I did step to the Peristil because that's my right. And it was really, it was a situation that was bound to break in any moment. I was alone, even though it was a part of it was a part of an exhibition in Split. But I was only with 3 people who work in Hulu Split, the Croatian Association of Artists. So they weren't able to help me. They weren't able to reach me, and the only help I got was from a photographer from Slobodna Dalmacija, and that's a local newspaper. So it was really violent. It was even more violent than it's shown on this video, and we put those videos out. And that actually, with the help of Severina, that actually went through the region. And what happened next was that the region also realized they have the similar problem as we do. What Rebekah also said, and I will go back to that topic, is that those masses or those performances are highly budgeted by the United States. Only last month we had 2 meetings of Horizon Group and Agenda 2025, one in Zagreb and one in Dubrovnik, where the politicians of the extreme right and right parties were present, and also members of Vigilare and people you see on all those videos who are leading those performances that are supposed to be prayers, but they're not. It's really easy in Croatia to mask something into prayer or into politics, because we are still not done with the war, and we are still dealing with the past. As Rebekah mentioned before, we are in general a very poor country, and especially men. Rebekah mentioned men, and they do kneel for money. But in my opinion, the question of women's rights in Croatia is mostly the question of women's pay. So women are completely underpaid. They rarely work because that's how it's supposed to be. And that tradition is still carried on in many parts of Croatia. And when we have a situation which I now have as something that came up, that came out of my work, which I didn't really expect to happen, is that women are reaching out to me a lot to help them with the cases of domestic violence, rape, and many other things that are quite scary. Is that they never really report those crimes because they don't believe the system, and they have no reason to believe the system, because we don't have enough support for women, and they have to come back home, and that's especially in the smaller places. And just to put it into perspective, Croatia is a country of 4 million inhabitants altogether. And when I speak about a smaller place, I speak about a place with I don't know, 80 inhabitants. So women often endure violence, and somehow one of the results of my work is also women contacting me, and I see it as some kind of some kind of a broadening of my artistic work, although my curator says that's not it and that's social work, and and I would kind of agree with him, but that's something that's really necessary to do. So now moving to the other project, I know this was not really coherent, but it's a really
I was wondering, could I maybe ask a question before moving to
Sure.
the next project, or do you want, I don't know, Rebekah, what you want
No,
wait
please
till the
ask,
end,
please
or
ask me, because I know this wasn't really coherent because it's such a broad topic.
No, it's not about that at all. I mean, that's just wonderful, and your interventions are so incredibly important. I just wanted to ask you kind of on the form of your intervention. How did you decide on sort of the silent form, on the rows, on the positions that you held during the performance? How did you decide on that rather than a kind of more vocal or, I don't know, different kind of intervention? What was your sort of thinking behind that?
My thinking was actually, I didn't think. For first time I came, I will be completely honest, because I think it's important to be honest, especially when we are in this type of situation where we are trying to reach something. I didn't think. I was working on a piece about femicide before I noticed the kneelers. So I was going to make something, and it was supposed to be a bigger intervention. But when I saw them and when I compared the numbers, and that was the year where we had the most femicides and a huge increase of domestic violence, I decided just to show how absurd it is to pray for patriarchy in the midst of such a crisis, and in the midst of women dying on daily basis and being in the news for one day, getting beaten a lot. And all I wanted to do was give them a meaning, give their death a meaning, and also to explain, because my work is always about explaining. I just want for each and every citizen in Croatia to hear both sides of the story, not only theirs, but the one that I have to say. And since I didn't get any lawsuit until now, and that is their main weapon of choice, I am definitely telling the truth. I am very, very well informed, and I am often giving interviews, but each silent mass is actually attributed to a problem women are facing in Croatia now. So the last one was, for example, a huge increase of suicide among young girls and young women, which is connected to cyberbullying, which is also a means that those men who pray use as a force to take us out, just to stop us from protesting them. So each silent mass is just giving voice and meaning to women, but in a way of showing them respect.
Ariana, do you want to describe this silent mass?
Yes, this is a silent mass where I invited my fellow artists to join me, and Brian will probably recognize some of them because they studied with me in Split. And this was the first time that artists were in the front line of a protest. And my colleagues were really shocked, and that's also another thing I wanted to mention. I know you're not art students, some of you maybe are, but it's important to say that in Croatia the artistic system we don't have a market. We completely rely on the state funds. So when we put ourselves out there, it's also extremely brave and important, because there's a big possibility we won't be able to get funds for our work next year. So these women you see with me were the ones who decided to stand next to me and be in the front row, in front of the statue of the first female journalist in Croatia, Marija Jurić Zagorka, which was and she was in news a few days before the silent mass, where one journalist who thought he was really, really funny and taking a group of tourists, decided to show them her work by touching her breast. So we brought the flowers to Marija Jurić Zagorka, who would probably find it funny, but we didn't. That's also a hidden narrative, that we find these things funny and not offensive. So that's why we started on the main square, and we finished next to the statue of Marija Jurić Zagorka.
And then, Brian, did you want to mention this work?
No, that's okay. I mean, that's maybe it's best to focus on Arijana's work, and if we
No, but the slide before, where I'm in Slavonski Brod, so this is one of my favorite silent masses, because those men were really they don't after this the statement that Minister Božidar Nagy gave to one Croatian journalist on the second silent mass. They stopped giving any statements, because they were afraid they will screw up again. So they kept silent, and they only have their website, where they have their blogs and their chastity vows and stuff like that, and rose to God and stuff, which are really not connected to faith at all. But this one was really funny, because those men from Slavonski Brod, which is a really, really small city in Slavonia, in Croatia, they said they were extremely afraid of me, and I was there alone. And there was, as you can see, 10 or 15 of them, and I only had a rose. One of them had a knife. I mean, it's really funny how they exploit the narrative, but also the moment that things twisted and changed was the one where I was a guest in a political talk show in Croatia, like the most watched political talk show. And I spoke about an hour about my work, but mostly about their initiatives. And after that, they issued a statement that they're afraid of me as an agent of Satan, and also as an agent of violence. Even though all I ever do is stay silent and hold a rose, sometimes more roses, sometimes just one rose, as seen on this photo. I'm only holding my fist up. So yes, when I stood there 2 years ago, I really didn't imagine I will be doing it 2 years. I thought it will be a maximum 3 months project. It ended up a 2-year project and going on. I believe I will change the ways that I fight, because if I didn't manage to, I managed to do something, but I didn't manage to do enough. I would say in conclusion that the biggest success of the silent mass is that now we have civic initiatives all around Croatia, and that I'm not the only one standing. There are civic initiatives in almost every city they're in, and these are not NGOs, and these are not women's organization. And I'll have to just do a quick flex to the topic of financing, why there are not NGOs and women's organizations, also because of the funding, because they know if they stand up to them, they will lose the funding because of the government we have now. So now we have citizens who self-organized, and they are standing there. Some of them are repeating silent mass with or without me. Some of them are doing what they feel is the best for their city. Only Split remained completely empty. In Split, I'm the only person whoever visits when I can, because I have to give support because of my huge media coverage to the smaller initiatives. So Split and Zagreb and Osijek are the three most urgent points to defend. But in my belief, it's almost as important as every city in Croatia, as big or small, because it's easier for a smaller city to use that narrative as something that is normal. We can talk about it in Zagreb on an intellectual elite level, as we do right now, because I consider myself to be a part of the elite. I am able to do my work, but I also do commercials, even though I finished two different art studies, and I also my final graduate project study is film directing. I only directed 2 movies because I didn't get funding, because my topics are refugees, women, things that are not really popular in Croatia. And that's why I have to work right now, to be completely honest, and just to put things into perspective. I am juggling 7 jobs. And I still consider myself to be in an elite position because some people can't find one job. And being an artist in Croatia, and that's what they always say to young artists, when you decide to be an artist in Croatia, it's already a small revolution, because it's a question of integrity, but it's also a question of the way of life you will lead. So will you be a part of the mass, or will you decide to be the one who will stand up against what's wrong? And also what we inherited from the States, and thank you guys for that, is that living in the moment movement, like take care of yourself, think about yourself first, put yourself first, which is something that is important, of course. And of course I go to therapy, and my mental health is not as well as it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I started to deal with feminist issues. But in the end, are we really that kind of society that we are focusing on ourselves right now and not thinking about what we're leaving behind? Because generations that came before us left us those rights, and they didn't get it. They were fighting for them. And I strongly believe, and that's why I think Rebekah chose that title for her book, that every art is a political statement. And I think that the role of the artist is the role of correcting the society and thinking about pushing the boundaries and helping to not only preserve the rights we have, but to just focus on women's right to choose. And I'm not saying that in the way we usually mention it, as the right to woman to do what she wants with her body, but to choose whatever she wants to be. And that's in Croatia at the moment, not only in Croatia, but in the entire region of ex-Yugoslavia. We are now a European star, which we really wanted to become. We wanted to become a part of European Union, but nothing really changed. We have more in common with the countries of ex-Yugoslavia than we have with Slovenia, with Austria, with Sweden. I mean, we share the same history, and we kind of share the same presence, and probably the same future, because we are all fighting the same battle. So that's why I didn't want to offend to answer your question, Bram, because I went far away. But to answer your question, also one thing that was really important for me was not to offend the people who really believe, and they are in churches. So in a predominantly Catholic country, before I dismantled the myth that they are connected to the Catholic Church, I didn't want to say a thing. Me personally, I don't have any problems with people who believe. I think it's a personal choice. It's not my personal choice, but it's somebody's personal choice, and it's not hurting anybody. But and when you look at religion, people who are really believers share the values. We share a lot of values. We share more values than they share with the people, with the men who are kneeling there.
Ariana,
Yeah.
is it okay if we shift to questions
Yes,
from the audience?
please, because I always talk too much. I'm sorry. I'm just.
I didn't realize that we exported self-care from the US, but it's sad to know.
Actually, yeah,
Good,
you did. You did. We watch it all the time with subtitles.
Yeah, you know,
The long stem rose in red yarn. Is there symbolic meaning for you? Can you speak to that at all?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I just
he's
heard.
asking the symbolism of the long stem rose and the red yarn.
Yeah, that was the silent mass that was dedicated to the women who lost their children due to the court processes, because also we have a corrupt judicial system, and money and influence are the ones who are making the decisions, not the judges, and the legal system is really that's why women don't report crimes. And I chose that topic for that silent mass. And the red yarn actually is the Brian, can you please help me? Is the cord which
The thread which connects. Yeah. Mhm.
the thread that, yes, that connects women with their children while in the uterus.
Yeah, like the umbilical cord that connects.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
umbilical
Sorry
cord
about
that
that.
cannot
Mhm.
that yes, thank you, Brian. That cannot be cut. So that silent mass was dedicated to that problem.
So it sounded like what
Modrak.
we were saying earlier that the groups that are in the square that are like doing the silent prayers, that they may be funded by American televangelists or groups here, that maybe don't have a direct link to like the Vatican or the Catholic Church. So I'm kind of curious, like, has the Vatican by chance issued a statement at all about any of this? And then the second question was, I mean, I guess I kind of have to ask, like, the US, like, at times being, I guess, a big supporter of Israel and whatnot. What about like religious minorities in Croatia, like Jews or even the Romani, like these groups that are, you know, doing these like the square protests that are bothering you? Like, what is their stance on the Romani or Jews?
Okay, I heard the first
repeat it?
question, but I didn't hear the second one. Just parts of it.
Oh, I was just saying this is the group that is doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Here you go. What do I do?
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Do I have to press something? Or just speak? Okay. Oh, the second question was,
Yes.
the groups, the members that, sadly, like physically attacked you, that are, doing the unemployed men that are in these squares doing this. What is their stance on, say, minorities in the sense of, Jews in Croatia or the Romani in Croatia? Like, are they against them? Have they mistreated them? I hope I'm making sense.
I'm glad you asked. So I will start with the second question. So Croatia follows the American politics. So we are also, as a state, pro-Israel. Although we have two hills, one is the government and one is the president, and the president is leaning towards Palestine but never actually said it, and the government is really leaning towards Israel because we are following your lead. But we don't have a problem with Jewish minority, to be honest, because it's really a minority and it's really closed. I believe that the fight for Palestine is also part of feminist battle, and me and my colleagues feminists are always on the rallies for Palestine. But among other minorities, the only minority that we have a problem with is the Serbian minority, and that's because of the war that happened in Croatia. So we are still always opting when we have a problem. We just talk about Serbs, like for no reason at all. We just move to talk about Serbia and the border issues and their politics. But what I find a paradox is that we now have very many foreign workers who came to Croatia from mostly Nepal, but also other countries which they just came here for better payment. But there are also refugees, and we as a country have a problem with that, which is really, it's a paradox because we were refugees 20 years ago, and I still remember it very vividly since I was a refugee as well. And it's unbelievable to me that we have such a short memory span that now I kind of understand that the younger generations, but they are more open. But the generations who were able to realize that the war was happening in Croatia and were refugees themselves have a huge problem with immigrants, refugees, and foreign workers in Croatia. So that's I would say the two crucial problems in Croatia now at the moment are women's rights and the rights of foreign workers and refugees and immigrants.
Ryan, did you want to add anything?
No, but this seems like it could maybe tie in really well with this other work that you were wanting to talk about. Yes, I think you also want to talk about this 5 to 95. Is that right? Was that the other plan for the talk?
Yeah,
or
sure.
not really. So I don't know. It seems like that could be a nice lead into that, the questions, but that's up to you, of course.
Sure. Okay, Derek. Okay, so from 1995 is also a project I thought I will be doing for a year max. Well, it's been 9 years since I started with this work with a colleague of mine, Andrea Castellan, who also studied in Split and then ended up in Zagreb studying filming. She was a camera woman and I was a director, the only two women on our year. So we had a huge problem at the very beginning, and that was that we weren't allowed to work together because who will carry the equipment? Like the equipment is not that heavy anymore, and we were both stronger than most men who were studying with us on that year. But as a result of that, and well, I will mention it only shortly. We had a huge Me Too movement also in Croatia, but not in Split, luckily, but in Zagreb and in Osijek. So there was a lot of sexual harassment happening on my university, and I was also the one of the many women and men who put in complaints. So that was kind of an incentive to start from 5 to 95. Andrea and I were talking, and we were discussing how there are topics in Croatian society that women talk about only within small groups of women. So we were drinking beer and talking about a friend of ours who had a miscarriage. And then we realized, but we have many friends and family members who had the same experience, and it was not even a deliberate miscarriage. It was just a miscarriage, something that happens to many women when in process of getting pregnant. And they never talk about it. We only talk about it like in the circle of women, in the circle of family and closest female friends, because we don't want to bother men with our problems. And when we reached that conclusion, we decided to see how the media works. And at the time, you could only see a written story, which was obviously fiction and nameless, of women who speak about things, but in a very self-censoring way, not to make men feel offended or themselves to be portrayed as victims or as somebody who is wounded in a certain way, because otherwise there would not be attractive to men anymore. And I know it sounds really weird, but in these 9 years, we conducted more than 800 interviews with women. So our decision was, okay, women don't have a voice in this country. Let's give them the voice. So we named the project from 5 to 95, but our eldest woman we talked to was 105. So we don't want to suggest in any way that life ends in 95. To be honest, I have to say that the whole project, and now we can deduct that because it's a really huge number of interviews, is showing us that the elderly women are the happiest one, because society finally lets go of the expectations that we have of women. And this woman you see here saying, and only now I enjoy in what is my true nature, she's finally figuring out who she is now when she's 70. And that's something we hear a lot from women who are over 60 years old. That was kind of a teachable moment for both Andrea and me, because we still had, even though we were both feminists and I was working a lot with women, but I still had that hidden bit of patriarchy even inside me, which I was not aware of. But giving women a chance to stand in front of a camera and speak was sort of a big step for Croatian society. And I still keep our first rejection note, because this project is also self-financed. I didn't mention before, but the first one is also self-financed, but helped by an organization called Domino. From 5 to 95 is completely self-financed. So Andrea and I are paying I mean, we're not paying for anything much. We're paying for our time, but it's a project we will do until the rest of our lives because we feel it's important. And now it became an virtual museum of women's oral history in Croatia. So now we have women who have survived 4 wars and 4 systems, which is really something I don't want to film ever again. Who grew up in extreme poverty. But the last question we always ask, it's 8 questions, always the same. Of course, not for the children, because we have children as well. The last question we ask is, how do you see the position of women in Croatia? And now out of approximately 800 women, we only have 1 woman who said, well, I think we're fine. All the others were saying, girls, you need to fight, you really need to fight, and don't wait until you're don't take any expectations from the society, be rebellious, be yourselves, don't wait until you're 60 to realize who you really are and what you really want. And just to come back, our first rejection letter, because we're really struggling with funding, was from the city of Split, who said, well, we really like this project, but it's subversive. And I wrote back and asked, can you please explain what is subversive in women talking? And they wrote back, women talking. So I think that's the best illustration of the situation in Croatia. I mean, it was almost 10 years ago, but I'm not sure. Well, situation in Split changed, but I'm not sure I won't be getting another rejection letter, since I'm getting them all the time. And we're collecting them, and we decided our next exhibition of this project, which was exhibited in New York this year and in Buenos Aires, and it actually responded well to both audiences, which I didn't expect. But it seems like we all have similar stories, in a way that we, as women, still consider ourselves insecure in a way, and that we ask ourselves a lot more questions than men do about making decisions and what to do with our lives. Are we making the right decision? Are we taking the right path? I guess that's something that can be translated in any language. At least that's what I heard in New York and Buenos Aires. So hopefully that will change. But I think this project, where we put women in front of the camera, and camera is really, really near them, and they are eager to speak and to answer the question which will be asked itself. How do we get to these women? They get to us, and we made a pledge to never say no to a woman who wants to be filmed. So we always film anyone who wants to be filmed, and they of course have an authorization. So it's all done extremely ethically, and yeah, I think that's the project that I'm most proud of, because I think it was kind of a community building moment, which actually helped me with my other works, and I mostly deal with feminist art, even with this mainly project, because before that I was known for this project. And we have a community that actually is involved in this project, and it's also not only Croatian project, but we have a broad audience from the entire region. As I mentioned before, we share the same history and the same but evidently I did not expect that. We also share a lot of the same issues, and I think every woman in this room now in Michigan can find herself in one of those stories you can find on our webpage.
Thank you,
I found
Ariana.
myself in 5, at least.
Thank you. And you've said that the interviews with these women is what allowed you to develop a trust in you then for Silent Night. And so everybody knows there's many of the interviews are translated into English and can be watched there. And we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, if that's okay. Nick.
I had a question about we'll make that go away. Sorry. Sorry, the phone started ringing. There was an archival image that came up, and I was curious about the relationship as a precedent. It was a work from the 70s. So I'm thinking that Ariana, you and Brian live in a country that's now Croatia, but Ariana, when you were born there was Yugoslavia. And I'm curious about the relationship between protest actions that happened in what was then Yugoslavia and the work that you do now. And if you could just sort of draw out some of the contextual relationship between that work from 1979 and the Silent Mass today.
Sure. So first, to explain quickly Sanja Iveković's work, I mean, it's hard to explain it quickly. Triangle. So Sanja Iveković is one of the most famous, I think, my favorite and most famous Croatian artists, but also Yugoslav artists. And this work was taking place in the period when the President Tito, you've probably heard of him, we were still in Yugoslavia, was having a big parade. And Sanja Iveković knew that there will be a lot of security, and you can see them on top of the building on the first image. And she sat on her terrace and she took a glass of whiskey, a book, a cigarette, and she was simulating masturbation, knowingly that someone will notice that and knock on her door and just prohibit her to do that. And that actually happened. So I'm not really sure how my work, because Sanja was always exploring this relation between private and political. For me, everything is political, even private is political. For Sanja, as I spoke to her and speak to her a lot, she does make a slight difference between private and political, but I think the main difference is that I'm always confrontive, which means I'm never hidden. The documentation of this work came out the day after. So, which was, of course, it didn't take anything from the work, and it was supposed to come out the day after. But for me, I really believe that in this performance art as something that's immediate and that's more, I would say, a quicker answer and maybe not that poetic. I am not that poetic as a person, but I'm more of a direct fighter, to put it like that. So because for me it's important, as I already mentioned, that everyone understands what I do, and that's why most of my works I keep it simple. Sanja's work is it's extremely smart, and I love it just because it is that smart and because it is that cryptic in a way that it's multi-layered. But for me, it's important that the person who is not educated understands what I do. And that's why I think most of my work, even I sometimes think it's oh my God, this is just too simple. It's not really an art. It's not what I wanted to do when I was studying, but still, for me, the importance now, for everyone to understand me, because art is an extremely powerful weapon to explain something and to advocate for something, but in a way that it's not elitist, in a way that only the people who come to galleries or come to your shows can understand it and put it into layers and ask a lot of questions of how it was built. But I can talk to a person who only finished primary school and they understand my work. That's I think the most important thing for me at
Do
the
you
moment.
do you think maybe there could be a connection in a way? I was thinking about how with this silent mass, and you're talking about how the men saw you as a threat, right? Saw you as dangerous, saw
Yeah.
you as a kind of devil in that sense. And that was because of an act which is fairly simple in a sense of standing
Yeah.
there, right, with a rose, like a fairly kind of, I mean, it's not a simple act, but a simple gesture maybe like that. Was seen as incredibly threatening. So perhaps you have this system of, of prayer and so on, which is supposed to be so kind of traditional and fundamental. And your single gesture shows how actually weak and constructed it is. Yes, all you do
Yeah.
is stand there, and suddenly they're threatened. You record women speaking, and suddenly the city of Split sees that as subversive. Yes. And perhaps Sanya too on this balcony is kind of, it's a
Sanya was
private
always
gesture,
subversive.
right?
Sanya was always
Right.
considered to be
Right.
subversive. But
Yeah.
if I had to say, because I was studying art and I was also talking to Sanya and to Vlasta Delimar and a lot of artists who worked during Yugoslav Republic. What they said was that they did enjoy some of the freedoms we now don't have anymore, because it was always a question of funding, but they were never sanctioned. We are. I always have to have everything licensed, and also I will be punished. I will be punished by not being able to fund my own artistic work for which I was educated to do. So if you ask Sanya or Vlasta or Mladen or anyone who was working at the time, they worked a lot. They worked much more than we do. And there is a huge gap, which you, Brian, probably might have noticed between my generation and their generation, and now the upcoming generation. So I guess that gap is the same in art and in feminist movements. And I would say it's due to the war, because when I was a child, and Rebekah wrote it, I think, in her book, I asked my mother, what's on the news when there's no war? That was a question a child would ask. And she didn't have the time to explain feminism to me. And feminist voices were rarely heard, because we had other topics that were really I wouldn't say more important, but they were in focus. So now my generation is bridging a huge gap. And what I see now is there is also a huge gap between my generation and generation to come, which is also, and I know we have a short amount of time, but I really think it's important to say that the Ipsos Pulse survey, which didn't include Croatia, but we would have the same results, but it did include the states, shown that the generation Alpha, so the young people who are now 17 or 18, think that feminism brought more bad things than good things. Their idol is Andrew Tate, whether they're young girls or young boys, and that patriarchy is for them completely normal state. state of things. So we do have a problem. We have it in Croatia. You have it in the States. I think it's something that has to be addressed, and there are many ways to fight. And I think, as I mentioned already, I think 10 times already, that art is something that's maybe appealing to a lot of people. And I don't care if people hate or like my work. The only thing that's important for me is that they think about it. And that's why my work is sometimes simple, but leaves an effect. I get threats or love letters, and sometimes dick pics, of course. I mean,
Thank you, Ariana. Those are good words to end with. And we really, yeah, thank you both for being here. And for Ariana, of course, for your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really don't want to end this with dick pics being my last words, but it's true. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was interesting to you. And yes, please, if anyone is interested more in the topic, buy Rebekah's book, and but also feel free to contact me as well.
Thank you, Brian, Ariane, and Rebecca.